It wasn't simply a film. The music was real. It went viral all around the globe. One of the most beloved musicals of all time made its way from the Austrian highlands to the hearts of millions. All of it. The music, the kids, the hills. To all appearances, everything was just right. On the other hand, there were some hiccups along the way. The backstage areas were in utter disarray at times. The final version included blooper footage, unanticipated slip-ups, and cast changes. Come explore the movie's unique aspects with us, as we uncover some hidden secrets and hilarious bloopers that were overlooked. Made history on a global scale. No one anticipated this. It wasn't simply a film. The music was real. A worldwide sensation ensued. Ernest Lehman and Robert Wise collaborated on the 1965 release of this American musical drama. Could it be the sky? The members of the cast, including Julie Andrews, Christopher Plummer, Peggy Wood, Eleanor Parker, and Richard Hayden, all lend their full support. This tale is adapted from Maria von Trapp's autobiography, The Story of the Trapp Family Singers, published in 1949. This story takes place in Austria during the emergence of Nazi Germany and follows Maria, a young governess who takes care of 7 children, falls in love with their father, and assists the family in escaping. Parts of the film were shot in Los Angeles, although the action takes place in Salzburg, Austria. Some people didn't really like it at first. The audience had a different experience from the critics, who were not all impressed. After barely 4 weeks in theaters, it topped the box office. It has already surpassed Gone with the Wind in terms of total box office receipts by the end of 1966. It remained there for a full 5 years. Those were massive figures. During its 4.5 years in cinemas, it set records in 29 different nations. There were 2 major re-releases, and the total number of tickets sold was over 283 million. That generated $286 million, an amount that continues to astound people to this day. It wasn't merely the lovely music or breathtaking settings, though, that kept it going for so long. It was the center. It struck a chord with many. Still, there were a great deal of mysteries concealed by the seeming beauty. There is more going on behind the scenes than what you witnessed in the film, including unexpected casting and set problems. How about we begin with? Only one name jumped out to writer Ernest Lehman while he was casting Maria. According to him, Julie Andrews is the only actress who could ever perform the part. Julie Andrews was a relative unknown back then. Just 2 of her films had wrapped filming, and none of them had been released. The head executive of Warner Brothers, Jack Warner, really passed on casting her for My Fair Lady. He didn't think she had the screen presence necessary for a Hollywood role. But after seeing the first Mary Poppins footage, director Robert Wise wasted no time. He suggested signing her before anyone else saw the video and snatched her up. Everything shifted after that choice. But Julie wasn't the only one under consideration. Every item on the list was a star. Among them are Leslie Caron, Angie Dickinson, Carol Lawrence, Shirley Jones, Doris Day, Grace Kelly, and Bancroft and Kelly. But she managed to land the part that would go on to become one of her most famous. But it still didn't make her rich. Supposedly, Julie agreed to work for only $225,000 and received no compensation for her services. It appeared reasonable then. At that time, she had not achieved superstardom. After the success of Mary Poppins and My Fair Lady, she began to receive offers of $1 million each film. The film's potential sweetness was another concern for Julie. She inquired, "How are you going to remove all the sugar from this picture?" During her initial meeting with Robert Wise. Wise realized then that she had grasped their plan. Julie was instrumental in bringing the necessary balance to the film. The team still had significant casting challenges, particularly in selecting a captain, despite Maria's role being confirmed. It was almost a no when Christopher Plummer said yes. Captain George von Trapp, played by Christopher Plummer, was a tough sell. Actually, he declined the part multiple times. The character's writing was too much for him. He thought the captain was too uninteresting and unmoving. That complicated matters. The group felt compelled to research other performers, and the roster was brimming with famous faces. Yul Brynner, Bing Crosby, Richard Burton, and Sean Connery. Still, I didn't feel good about any of them. Christopher still wasn't prepared to accept. He therefore conveyed his argument clearly in a letter to Ernest Lehman, a writer. He desired modifications. He envisioned the captain as more than just a disciplinarian. What he desired was profundity. Christopher reportedly requested a captain who was more sophisticated and well-traveled during the making of America's favorite musical, The Sound of Music. He wished for him to display feelings, to be humorous. It was important to him that his speech to Maria differ significantly from his speech to Elsa. All members of the squad were in agreement. He collaborated closely with Robert Wise, the director, and Lehman to implement those adjustments. Christopher even requested a solo performance that could convey the captain's anguish over his feelings for Maria and his uncertainty about how to cope. Making such a daring action paid off. Christopher added a fresh dimension to the persona. He endowed the captain with an irreplaceable blend of charisma and power. The filming could commence once Julie and Christopher were finally involved. However, there were several hiccups on set. Casting adjustments of note. Even though it didn't take all of the auditionees, The Sound of Music boasts one of the most adored casts in cinematic history. Many famous performers were considered for the parts, particularly Liesl. Several famous actors were considered, including Terry Garr, Kurt Russell, Mia Farrow, and Patty Duke. For Liesl, Mia Farrow tried out not one, twice, but 3 times. Mia possessed a lovely charm and a terrific reading, according to director Robert Wise's notes. However, her energy levels were inadequate. Importantly for Liesl's job, he also pointed out that her dancing wasn't powerful enough. Charmy and Carr, with their perfect blend of charisma and movement, ended up getting the part. However, there were other obstacles besides casting. The actor's hairstyle was a major point of focus because of the importance placed on appearances. Although Julie Andrews was born with brown hair, the studio insisted that she dye it blonde for the picture. Everyone was taken aback when the initial attempt at adding highlights turned out orange. They fixed it by dyeing her hair a platinum blonde. The character Rolf, played by Daniel Truget, had his hair bleached as well. In contrast to Julie, though, the harm persisted. From that point on, his hair never grew back, he claimed. My hair thinned very significantly, and I lost half of it. Julie required doubles, but the kids didn't. Once only. In the finished version, her stand-in Larry Thomas had a single scene. Upon seeing the children, the captain drives past and notices her dangling from a tree. Laurie had previously collaborated with Julie on Mary Poppins, where Julie had even performed flying sequences. Production nevertheless encountered significant challenges despite having the cast in place. Everything was almost turned off in that 1 second. The set is tense. Captain Von Trapp, played by Christopher Plummer, was a compelling actor. However, not many are aware of how near he was to abandoning the project. And why was that? His voice as a singer. Plummer was surprised to hear that a professional singer's voice would be blended with his own in the finished product. His heart broke over this. In the vain hope that his voice alone would suffice, he enrolled in singing classes and diligently practiced. The singing that we hear, however, is actually a combination of his and another singer's voices. Afterwards, Plummer's thoughts on the matter were revealed by writer Ernest Lehman. He claimed he was unable to perform the role justice because he was aware his voice would be dubbed. Even Plummer admitted to feeling emasculated. He nearly gave up due to his exasperation. On set, that wasn't the only difficult time. After meeting Rolf, Liesl quickly climbed through Maria's bedroom window in one of the initial sequences that were filmed. It took 15 attempts until I got it properly, even though it appears easy on screen. A wide variety of shooting positions were required of them. Charmian Carr was given the appearance of having recently raced in heavy rain with a cold water sprayer named Mr. Rainstorm. In the time between takes, it saturated her, ensuring that she appeared wet the whole time. The remaining young actors didn't begin filming until the second day, all the while this was happening. Jumping on Maria's bed to sing My Favorite Things was their first scene together. After then, though, the weather remained persistent. It actually worsened. The weather in Salzburg and Bavaria was practically non-stop while filming, but when the rain halted the music, it looked sunny and wonderful on screen. The rain was so intense that at times the crew and actors had to seek shelter inside barns or tents until it subsided. During these torrential downpours, the musical scores for Do Re Mi and The Sound of Music were filmed. Even driving up the mountains became impossible due to the muddy and waterlogged roadways. The Jeep was unable to make it, so the cast, crew, and camera equipment were all transported up the mountain on ox carts. Robert Wise, the director, recalled a memorable moment he shared with Julie Andrews during this period. An enduring memory of Julie, he recalled, was of her bundled up in a fur coat, being pulled up the hill in an ox cart for warmth. Robert Wise detailed the length of time they had to wait while discussing the challenging beginning scene. Up there, beneath the tarps, we would wait. Because it's such a hassle to bring everything down and then back up again, you should probably avoid going down the hill. While filming that iconic mountain shot, we encountered more than just bad weather. Getting the ideal shot was another concern. Massive challenges, monumental moments. Although it is one of the most famous scenes in cinematic history, capturing Maria's spinning on a mountain while singing was no picnic. A cameraman was hoisted onto a helicopter and flown directly toward Julie Andrews in the center of a field in order to capture that scene. The helicopter's ear-piercing noise forced choreographer Mark Broff to take cover behind a bush, where he used a megaphone to signal to Julie when to begin singing and running. Julie described it later on. "Every time the helicopter finished, it went around me," she stated on The Tonight Show. "Unfortunately, I was tossed to the ground by the jet engine's downdraft. At least 6 or 7 times was required of them. I was spewing out various substances, including mud and hay, and I insisted on asking, 'Why don't you take a broader circle?' However, there were other challenges as well. Plus, there were humans. A neighboring farmer owned the land they worked. The crew was enchanted by the towering hay and greenery on their first visit. As a result, they begged the farmer to leave it alone. Production had already begun when he had already cut down all of the vegetation. I didn't stop there. The little stream that Maria used to skip stones across was likewise formed by digging a ditch. Regardless matter the situation, the farmer was unhappy. He grew increasingly irritated by the crew's prolonged presence, particularly because their noise was waking up his cows. The set designers even fabricated the woods that Maria uses as a backdrop for her dancing. Those enchanted moments? Totally artificial. At long last, the film features an emotional cameo by the actual Maria Von Trapp. Maria can be seen strolling behind Julie Andrews and her daughter and granddaughter during the "I Have Confidence" dance, which takes place as she exits the monastery. It was a vivid memory for director Robert Wise. He mentioned that they had gotten her a costume and all, but that, like with any film, they had to perform several takes, and the entire process took about 3 hours. You have to do it repeatedly, but she didn't realize that. Maria was reunited with her family years later. Their 1973 rendition of Edelweiss was featured on the Julie Andrews Hour. There are a lot of untold stories behind the scenes, including the fact that Maria taught Julie to yodel. A long-lasting kiss. The soul of the music was the passion that flourished between Maria and the captain. Filming their iconic kiss, however, was far from a romantic affair. To complete the scenario, it really took over 12 attempts. The issue arose when Christopher Plummer and Julie Andrews were unable to control their laughter. Big arc lights were utilized by the production to generate the gentle moonlight that can be seen in the background. However, a peculiar noise resembling a rasp or sigh came from these lights. The performers would always lose it in fits of laughter whenever the lights produced that sound. While filming the Oscar-winning musical The Sound of Music, Julie confessed that Chris and I would burst out laughing. "It was inevitable," she went on to say. "The lights would begin to complain to us once more whenever we returned to the site. We began to giggle even more. Actually, it became so bad that we were unable to traverse the scene." In a 2005 interview, Christopher revealed that being physically near to Julie also made him chuckle. Because of how bad it got, director Robert Wise had to shoot most of the scene at night in order to acquire any decent footage. However, this was far from the only instance where the crew had to find creative solutions. A dangerous situation arose in one scenario with a young actor who was actually in danger, a tumble into the water, and an on-set fright. Despite how carefree it looked on film, Maria and the children actually took a significant risk when they jumped out of the boat and into the lake. There were 4 takes of the scene where the boat capsizes and everyone gets wet. However, the problem is this. Actress Kim Carrath, who portrayed Gretel, was unable to swim. In order for Julie Andrews to get to Kim fast, someone advised her to dive forward into the ocean. On the other hand, Julie stumbled backwards instead while filming. Kim was having trouble staying afloat, so the crew had to dive in and assist her. Afterwards, Julie remarked on her bravery during an ABC broadcast. The scene was ultimately cut so that Heather Menzies, who played Louisa, could be seen rescuing Kim from the water. Filmed on camera was a low-key rescue operation. Scenes on land were just as challenging as those on sea. Remi's bike riding scene may appear effortless and joyful, but it actually required months of preparation, including dancing, puppets, and actors without teeth. In Doremi, the musicians and bikers had to time their movements perfectly for the bike scene. 2 months of preparation were required prior to filming. The child actors and Julie Andrews rode bikes around the Fox lot in Los Angeles before their trip to Salzburg. Repeatedly, they synced the bike's movements to the music. Mark Brose and D.D. Wood, the choreographers, used elaborate storyboards created by Maurice Zuberano to plan out every element. Careful preparation went into every aspect of the dance. There was a special dance for even the puppets. The solitary goat herd, number 4. Accurate movement of the puppets was required. Special marionettes were built for the scene by puppeteers Bill and Cora Baird. To give the impression that Julie and the kids were performing all of the puppet work themselves, it needed 3 weeks of training. The puppets, too, had dance routines. At the same time, the young performers were practically blossoming. In the 6 months that filming lasted, Nicholas Hammond, who played Friedrich, grew an extra inch. Because of that, He towered above Charmian Carr. She had to balance on boxes while they were together to fix it. The actress who played Marta, Debbie Turner, actually chipped her front teeth on set. Thus, 2 replicas were fabricated for her by the props department. In the background, Julie Andrews was the kids' big sister or mentor, assisting them with scenes and being there for them during the long days of filming. Accidents did occur, nevertheless, despite extensive preparation. There was even one involving a secret injury and a shattered glass. Mishaps, revisions, and an altered conclusion. Charmian Carr slipped and fell through a plate glass window while dancing in the gazebo during the 16-going-on-17 scene. She injured her ankle at the conclusion of filming. They put on makeup, bandaged it up, and attempted to conceal it on camera. Actually, that moment and something good were shot last. The entire gazebo was meticulously reconstructed on the Los Angeles Fox lot by the crew. It was difficult to shoot inside the actual Salzburg gazebo because it was too little and had too many windows. Julie Andrews left her imprint in an additional scene as well, by the use of a note that was absent from the initial piece. An additional octave was added to the final chord of Do Re Mi by her. Her explanation to Diane Sawyer, relayed years later, was that she acted on her ability to do so. Julie is no longer able to sing those notes, unfortunately. Due to voice problems brought on several years of singing, she underwent throat surgery in 1997. It was intended to be a straightforward operation, but something went awry. Forever, her voice was marred. The lawsuit, which she filed against the doctor in 1999, was finally resolved in 2000. No one was told about it. There were limitations even at the shooting site. Aside from a single big scene, Salzburg was a useful city. The producers encountered a hurdle when they attempted to replicate the Anschluss, which depicts Nazis marching through Residenzplatz. They were informed that they were not allowed to display swastika banners or audiences cheering them on. Despite Salzburger's best efforts, Second Unit Director Maurice Zuberano insisted that they be portrayed as Nazi sympathizers. He said that actual film of Hitler's entry into Austria would suffice. Things shifted after that. Although Salzburg approved of the scene, they demanded that the banners be removed right after filming ended. Although applause was still not permitted, the message was conveyed effectively. Last but not least, 3 scenes were shot, but did not make it into the finished product. During the Do Re Mi montage, one appeared. The sequence when Liesel was meant to accompany Rolf to meet Maria after seeing him distribute telegrams was deleted because it hindered the plot flow. The captain was shown singing Edelweiss in the garden in another edited scene, contemplating Maria. Maria, meanwhile, was pictured contemplating him from her window. Robert Wise, the film's director, felt the scene was superfluous and detracted from the flow of the narrative. Sister Margarita informed Maria that Mother Abbas desired to meet her in a brief sequence that was the final to be cut. Maria is shown waiting in the corridor at the beginning of the last scene. Clearly, the tale needed each of these cuts to keep going, and the final version was edited with great care. However, not all scenes were flawless, because numerous uncut bloopers were present. A few slip-ups that managed to get through. A flawless film like The Sound of Music nonetheless had its share of hiccups. The finished product included some previously cut scenes. The scene at the Abbey, where the Von Trapp family takes refuge, is a prime example. Those headstones are actually lying flat against the wall, but they're used to show that they're hidden. In all honesty, nobody could possibly squeeze behind them. When you take a closer look, it becomes clear that it was a mistake. As Maria sings Favorite Things during the bedroom storm scene, there's another strange moment. Even though she isn't meant to be singing, young Marta, who sits next to Maria, mouths the words and feels terrible. The fact that she became engrossed in the moment is evident. Once again, an amusing error. Kurt continues to sing with his mouth agape as Maria and the children ascend the stairs at the conclusion of the Do Re Mi performance. Michelin X radial tires weren't even available in 1938, but in a moment as the family is escaping in their automobile, the camera shot below the vehicle reveals them anyhow, even though the music has stopped. Not until 1948 were they manufactured. Captain Von Trapp and Max share a moment as well. We hear 3 tapping noises as George playfully taps Max on the face, yet George only taps twice. There's a minor mistake in the sound, but it's noticeable. While this may not seem like big deal now, they become more apparent in the part that follows. Mistakes that were lying in plain sight exposed. Cinematic elements have a way of revealing more than is necessary at times. Following the children's tumble in the lake is one such instance. The earth is already damp when they emerge and make their way to the home. That's because it got wet in previous takes. The floor was a dead giveaway that the sequence wasn't shot all at once. The scene where Captain Von Trapp rips a Nazi banner in half is another eye-opening moment. You can see his search for the perfect position if you look closely enough. It's already been sliced to make it easy to tear. So, it was premeditated, even though it appears to be a powerful scene on TV. Next, there's the scene from the puppet performance. Uncle Max, can we really continue with the puppet show? Gretel rushes up to him and asks. Just as Gretel is about to start her line, Marta begins to sprint too quickly in the backdrop. Whenever it's her turn, she swiftly halts, waits, and then joins the rest. Liesel, Charmy, and Carr become perplexed at another Doremi scene when Maria and the children are frantically rushing up and down the steps. Even though she's following the choreography exactly, she can't help but notice how Heather Menzies' Louisa is confidently doing it differently. Consequently, Liesel pauses and adjusts her motion to mimic Louisa's. In the 40th anniversary special, Carr revealed that she had reservations about her decision. On the other hand, she later saw the film and realized she had been correct the entire time. These mistakes that occurred behind the scenes may not appear significant, but they occurred frequently, particularly with regard to continuity. Disruption in continuity. What we call continuity in film occurs when there is no change from one scene to the next. Still, there are many instances in musical accompaniment where details don't add up. The scene where Liesel, after meeting Rolf, climbs through the window is one such example. She starts out by standing in the center of the bed and having a conversation with Maria, but she's off to the side when the camera pans. Subsequently, the focus shifts back to her once more. One more involving the character played by Christopher Plummer. He once threw down a drape that the kids used to build their own clothing for play. However, though, as soon as he steps away, the floor becomes visible and the curtain disappears entirely. As the party takes a carriage ride around Salzburg, they stop at a Friday SOR salon. However, they go by the identical store again a few seconds after Maria turns around. So, in the span of a few seconds, they essentially rehash the same street twice. The captain is requested to play the guitar in an earlier scene, right before Edelweiss. He signals with a raised left hand that he doesn't want anything and a glass in his right. However, as the camera angle shifts, he raises his right hand and the glass is now in his left. Without magic, that rapid switch would not be feasible. Shifts in hair texture or color can also be quite telling. There are several long shots of Maria's hair flying about in the wind during Do Re Mi. However, up close, her hair is immaculate. The children then act erratically following the scene at the lake when the boat capsizes. Louisa is positioned front and left in one image. In the blink of an eye, though, she's over to the right, holding Gretel. She manages to move despite the lack of time. And there's something peculiar about Nicholas Hammond's portrayal of Friedrich's hair. His hair appears in the scene